Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Pepsi Prebiotic Cola in original and cherry vanilla. That Pepsi taste you love, with no artificial sweeteners, only 30 calories, just 5 grams of sugar, and 3 grams of prebiotic fiber. That great Pepsi taste with even more to love. Pepsi Prebiotic Cola. Unbelievably Pepsi.
Let's be completely honest. Are you happy with your job? The fact is, a huge number of people can't say yes to that. Too many of us are stuck in a job we've outgrown or one we never really wanted in the first place. But we stick it out and we give reasons like, what if the next move is worse? And I've put years into this place. And maybe the most common one, isn't everyone miserable at work? But there's a difference between reasons for staying and excuses for not leaving. It's time to get unstuck. It's time for Strawberry.me. They match you with a certified career coach who helps you get from where you are to where you want to be, either at your existing job or by helping you find a new one. Your coach helps clarify your goals, creates a plan, and keeps you accountable along the way. Go to strawberry.me/career and get 50% off your first coaching session. That's strawberry.me/career.
Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham. I'm an attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham. I'm the therapist.
So today we are going to be talking about the Menendez murders. And this is Lyle and Erik Menendez, who were convicted for killing their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. And you might be asking, why are you talking about this 30-year-old murder case? And there's a reason, because next week we're going to be covering a new documentary that's coming out in a few days, and it's called Menendez to Menudo. So as we're going to be talking about the defense that Lyle and Erik Menendez used to justify why they killed their parents, was that their father, Jose Menendez, had been sexually abusing them since they were very young children. And he was also very physically abusive, aggressive, demeaning, demoralizing, everything. He was just...
And their mother was...
a real monster. Then their mother took the father's side. Mm-hmm. They did tell the mother, I think Lyle, the older one, he did try to tell the mother. She, didn't do anything about it, didn't believe him.
She was also an alcoholic, and according to them, alcoholic, addict, and verbally abusive.
Yeah. So she was no angel.
And maybe physically abusive too.
Right. So now,
they were both bad.
So people. Now what has happened is, if you don't remember this, there was Menudo was a boy band, probably the first boy band. This is before 98 Degrees or NSYNC. They were one of the first boy bands, mm-hmm. and they were all Latin mm-hmm. from different countries. And they kind of rotated members in and out, mm-hmm. but they were just always Menudo.
Yes. Well, Ricky Martin was in Menudo.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And so Jose Menendez was in the music industry, mm-hmm. and apparently he was kind of obsessed with Menudo. Mm-hmm. And now one of the members of Menudo has come forward. He's now like a man in his 50s or something, and has said that Jose Menendez molested him, sexually abused him when he was a teen and he was in this group. So now, we're coming back full circle, because mm-hmm. this is the first kind of corroboration of any sort mm-hmm. that Lyle and Erik have ever had. And they were really at the time. So Lyle, he at the time, I think, was the time of the murders, I think he was 21. Erik was like 19. And they had, well, let me back up. I don't want to say they'd never told anyone. They had told some family members. And again, they tried to tell their mom. But, you know, when the trial was going on, there was actually 2 trials. The first one, it was a hung jury for both. And so they retried them and they were convicted in 1996. And we'll get more into this later about the details of the trial. But they really weren't believed by the general public. And they were kind of made fun of and like, you know, these are just 2 spoiled rich kids who wanted to inherit their parents' money. And they're just using this abuse excuse. That was the first time that term had ever come out. And it didn't really go well for them. And we were talking before we started about how, you know, if this had happened today, you know, like, because now the attitude is, and it should be the same for men and women, is that if somebody says that they have been sexually assaulted, you believe them. Because statistically, the chances of someone lying about something like that are like less than 1%. But they were not believed at all.
They were not believed. And what was, I mean, I don't know if you're going to get into the details of the murders, but, you know, the murder happened in August of 1989, and they were caught, or they would turn themselves in March of 1990. And between that time, they both went on a spending spree, essentially, which did not help their case.
Yeah, they were buying Rolexes and Porsches
and chain restaurants and, you know, kind of living this high life. And apparently the cops had zeroed in on them pretty quickly, but they just didn't have the evidence. So that really did not help their case. And this was one of those cases that got tried in the media very quickly. And the first trial was on court TV. So it got tried in the media very, very quickly. And these boys were, you know, it had never been revealed until it was revealed during that first case what was really, truly going on with them. So,
and it also wasn't revealed till, I think, right before the trial. So it took a pretty long time for the case to come to trial.
It was 93. So they were arrested in 90. Then the trial wasn't until 93. So people had, you know, many, many years of getting stuck in their heads that these were 2 spoiled, rich, entitled boys that that killed their parents
for
no reason other than they wanted their money now. Right. They wanted this $14 million estate right now. And that was what this was all about.
Right. So right before the trial, the defense disclosed that this was going to be their defense, that they had been abused for years and that they murdered their parents out of fear that their father would kill them after they threatened to expose him. Apparently right before the murders, I forget what instigated this. I think it was, I have so many notes. It's really hard to,
because they did decide to use, because we were talking about this, they did decide to use the battered women's syndrome. They felt like they were in danger because they were going to expose him. They felt like they were in danger. They felt like they had no choice.
Right. So that is what is called imperfect self-defense. So because the prosecution was saying this is a first-degree premeditated murder. And I can't remember how long. At first, they were still sort of saying, oh, we didn't do this. You know, it was the mob, or, you know, they had these other theories. And then they finally said, yes, we did it. And so the trial was not about who did it. The trial was about whether they should be convicted of murder or manslaughter. So there's something called imperfect self-defense, where it's a killing that would otherwise be murder, but it's reduced to voluntary manslaughter if the defendant killed the person because he acted with an honest but unreasonable belief that they needed to defend themselves.
Yes.
So that's what they claim, that it might sound crazy to you and me, that they felt they had to, because they shot their parents while they were sitting on the couch watching TV.
And it was a brutal crime scene. I mean, that was one thing, is they have this very 80s, if you see the living room, it's this very 80s white couch, and both the parents are wearing white, and they shoot dad 6 times. They shoot mom 10 times. And apparently
they reloaded.
Yes.
In the middle.
And they went out and reloaded. They had shotguns. They went out and reloaded and went back into the house to shoot mom in the face. And if you see, the dad is slumped on the couch and mom is like curled up on the floor.
Yeah.
So for many people, the feeling is, okay, right, like you're not in imminent danger. These, even if you were abused by your parents, even if these are the worst parents known to man, that they're not hurting you right at this moment. You did go down, because they learned that one of them went down to San Diego to buy these shotguns with a fake name.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that first degree murder? Isn't that planning out a murder? You're not in danger. You go outside to reload and you're shooting. I'm just saying that, like, you go outside to reload and you shoot your parents. Now, I can understand how they would want to go. I mean, if Kitty was my mother, I'd want to go outside to reload too and shoot her right in the face.
But what had happened a couple days before the murder and what instigated it was that, okay, so Lyle's the older one.
Yes.
He was molested, I think, beginning when
At
he was 6.
Yeah.
Until I can't remember what age, but basically at a certain age, the father stopped molesting, according to them, stopped molesting Lyle and started molesting Erik, who's the younger one. And apparently he carried on with Erik for much longer. And so Erik and Lyle didn't know. Like, Lyle never told Erik. Erik never told Lyle. Although in the trial, it came out that Lyle had sexually abused Erik at least one time. So he was just acting out like what had happened to him. Anyway, so they go through their teenage years and everything, and they're not, no one's talking about this. But in the meantime, their father is really, really just critical, harsh, very hard on them. It's very difficult. And so I guess Erik finally told Lyle what had happened to him, that he had been molested all this time. And Lyle confronted Jose. And Jose basically threatened to... So Lyle was threatening to, expose this. And the father basically threatened to kill him, destroy him, or, whatever. And if he ever said anything to anybody. And so that was the crux of the threat. And so because he had seen his father do terrible things and kind of knew he was probably capable of this, and he didn't feel like he could just be silent, I just think that, it just all started, it just kind of snowballed. And this happened over the course then it happened pretty quickly after that, over the course of, it was like a week. And then that's when they bought the guns. And then,
so they bought the guns as a way of protecting themselves?
I think so. I think that was their initial, and it seemed like they started to become a little bit paranoid too. And, and I think they bought the guns for protection because they said that they thought that the father was going to kill them because now the cat's out of the bag. Yeah. Now they both know, Lyle and Erik both know what happened to each other, and they're confronting the dad. And this is all kind of falling apart. Yeah. And then their justification for killing the mom was they basically like...
Listen, this mom sounds horrendous. I mean...
No, she's awful too. Oh, and I think there was some talk that she had molested one of them or been sexually inappropriate with them. So, but they saw it more like a mercy killing, like in the sense that, like, because, the father was a cheater and, he was just an awful person. And, it was just like, the mother was harder to understand. Yeah. But like you said, but she was awful. And they were a team. Yeah. She stuck up for the father. Yeah. So she's aligned with the father. So how can they just kill the father?
Listen,
and not kill
I totally understand killing these people. I'm with you on this one. I mean, I get it completely.
Yeah.
But okay, that makes a lot more sense because I knew that there was some sort of confrontation. I knew all of that. But if this, but I didn't really, because I knew they had gone down to San Diego. I knew they used a fake name, but I didn't know this was all within this time frame and that they were doing this to protect themselves. Okay, I'm with that. So that's different. That's not premeditated. That's a little different.
Right. And so, let's see. Yeah, Lyle said the abuse stopped when he was 8 years old. Later realized it was because Jose turned his focus to Erik.
And then Erik's abuse was until he was a teen, like into
yeah,
the
a long time.
years.
Yeah, it was 3 days before the murder when Lyle confronted Jose, threatened to reveal the abuse. Yeah. So in here, what had happened was, so I think it was Erik or one or both of them, when they were under 18, they got in some kind of trouble with the juvenile court over a robbery or something. And that's when they started seeing this psychologist.
Oh,
Jerome Oziel.
Yeah, this part I thought was really interesting because apparently this Jerome is the family therapist, or was he Erik's psychotherapist?
He was Erik's. He was,
okay.
I think he was seeing both of them, maybe.
Because I've seen that one person called him a psychiatrist, another person called him a psychologist, two different things. Right. One's a medical doctor, the other one's a PhD.
They called him doctor.
Well, but that's both a psychiatrist is a doctor and a psychologist is a doctor. It's just one's a medical doctor and the other one's a PhD doctor. One can prescribe, one went to medical school and can prescribe meds. The other one's just a PhD and is a psychologist and performs therapy. So I would think more of a psychologist if he's having therapy. Mm-hmm. And then, so what's interesting is apparently this psychologist, Jerome, who's a real shitty therapist, if he is, I'm sorry, but so I guess apparently they say this is the family therapist. That
the family never went to therapy.
Okay, so that's the part I don't make sense. So apparently Erik was seeing him
because he'd gotten in some trouble. I think the parents said, you need help. Or, he was starting to become a little juvenile delinquent or something.
Apparently he was continuing to see him. And so after the murders, he confessed to Jerome, I killed my parents. Mm-hmm. And when someone confesses now, if he said, I'm going to harm my parents, then Jerome's obligation is to warn the parents, your kid's going to come and kill you. Mm-hmm. You have to tell someone and warn them and warn the police. But if it's after the fact, if it's already happened, there's nothing you can do about it. By law, you can't. Someone can come out and say this is what I learned, how I learned it, but you can't do anything about it. And you have patient privilege. Like you can't say anything. But this dimwit Jerome, which is really wrong, is he then tells his mistress.
And his wife, I think
Judalon Smith, he tells his mistress that Erik confessed to him, then he breaks up with the mistress gets mad, the mistress goes to the police and tells them, and then apparently, this is a part I'm really confused about. So then apparently Lyle goes to the doctor and threatens the doctor and says, you can't, don't tell anybody. And then, so the judge says, well, you've now waived your the privilege because you threatened him. But if Erik is the patient, how can but Lyle's not your patient. Erik's your patient.
Well, I don't.
So that's why I was saying, is this a family? So if this was a family therapist and you were all going there together, then I can see how, so Lionel's part of the family, but how is this if Erik confessed, how, right? Because you as the therapist, you are obligated, if you're ordered by a court of law, you're obligated to always say, no, I cannot report on this. This is my client. I'm not going to, this is confidential. Plus, why are you taping all your sessions like this?
Okay. Well, first of all, I think, so I have written down here, okay, so Erik confesses to Oziel. Oziel called Lyle to his office to do more therapy. He said he wanted him to come or he would call the police. And then Oziel claimed that Lyle threatened him. And the mistress, Smith, or this is her last name, she was listening at the door to the therapy session. And at first she said that Lyle never threatened him. But then he broke up with her and she's like, no, I'm going to tell the truth. She goes to the police. She tells him what she heard. And she tells them that he has recordings of the, well, I don't know why he was, well, there was two types of recordings. There were, some of the recordings were of the therapy sessions themselves, which I don't even think that's proper.
Well, you can, but you have to get the sign off from the patient. Right. And there has to be a clinical reason why.
Well, the reason why was, okay, so when the parents sent Erik to this guy because he got in some juvenile trouble, and they had Erik sign a form saying that Oziel could tell them everything. And so Erik said in therapy that he suspected this was done to keep him from talking about the sexual abuse.
But the thing is that once Erik turned 18, which he was at that point, he was 18 already after the parents. Once you turn 18, you cannot, as a therapist, report anything back to the parents.
Right. But I think he was operating under that waiver still or something. I don't know.
But even though it's the waiver, you still by law cannot go back to the parents.
Well, he never did tell the parents, but for whatever reason, he was recording the sessions, and then he also had recorded notes where he would dictate notes. And that's eventually what was admitted into trial. So this issue went all the way to like the California Supreme Court. And that's why they were sitting in jail for so long. One of the reasons is that this issue was crucial. This was the prosecution's case.
Yeah.
You know, this guy, Oziel, was their star witness, and this was their whole case. They needed this to get in. So they spent like months and months and months litigating this, went to the Court of Appeal, went to the Supreme Court, and ultimately it was decided that the tapes of the actual therapy sessions were not admissible, but the dictated tapes of his notes were. And in those notes, he talked about what Erik had told him. And so that's what that whole fight was about. And it also, because it seemed like he was setting these guys up. He also had a tape, which I don't think was admissible, where he had Erik and Lyle record a session where Oziel presented his theory as to why the killing occurred. I guess to try to get them to say, yeah.
But if Erik was always his patient, why is he calling Lyle down there? Lyle's not your client.
I think he's trying to set them up. He's like, this is a big case. Like, I feel like he lured.
But personally, if I heard about this, I would never send anyone to this guy.
Look, this guy's a scumbag. His license was revoked.
Okay, good. Because I would not send one person to him. Why in God's name you've got your mistress? First off, mistress, that alone makes you kind of like, hello, you're supposed to model healthy behavior and you're cheating on your wife.
Listening at the door.
And she's listening at the door.
I know.
I'm sorry, every therapist known to man has a sound machine that you stick right by your door that muffles sound. So you don't even have good boundaries then. Why in God's name are you accepting? If I had parents that came to me and said, will you tape record all of our things and give it back to me? I'd say, no, I'm not the right therapist for you.
He was a scumbag.
You crazy people.
I think he was initially like a sex therapist, like a couples therapist.
This guy's
I don't know where they found this guy.
This guy's no. So I bet you anything, these people probably were like, oh, we'll pay you a bunch of money, work with our kid, and then tape record everything, and we want it. And I'm sure he agreed to it. It's awful. And again, I'd like to come back to, it's confidential. Once Erik told him, even if you think that Erik and Lyle are bad people for killing their parents, the law is, as a therapist, it is confidential. Once someone tells you something, and I've had clients tell me a lot of stuff over the years, a lot that I cannot reveal. And it's just, that is how it works.
Yeah.
You have to hold the confidences. You may not like it. You may not agree with it, but Jerome, you are scum.
No, he's he's totally shady.
That's
and
wrong.
He's no longer a therapist. Thank
Good.
goodness. Well, yeah, he lost his license in 1997.
Oh, good.
As of 2017, he's hosting relationship and marriage and sex seminars in Portland.
Oh, God. Are people attending these things?
I don't know. That sounds like, oh gosh, that sounds kooky.
Yeah. Probably doing weird crap there, but
so, yeah,
don't go to those people.
That was a big issue. In that. So anyway, so it finally goes to court, and the way that they did it is they actually impaneled two separate juries.
Yes.
And one jury was for Lyle, one was for Erik. And let's see. Leslie Abramson, who, let's see, is this the second? Oh, this must be the first trial. So Leslie Abramson was representing Erik initially, and the attorney, Jill Lansing, was representing Lyle. And so both juries heard the same evidence in the same courtroom, and it was televised, and people were, it was a daily fodder. And this is when, all the sexual abuse testimony came out. And it was actually Lyle who was the one who did all the testifying. And he was very emotional, very... I don't know, it depends on who you ask, but I mean, a lot of people believed him.
Yeah.
A lot of people really, he was sobbing a lot. And then
it was very painful.
Erik was sobbing, and Lyle was apologizing to Erik for not, for the molestation, for him molesting Erik. And that was the first time that had ever came out. It came out in the courtroom. And so, he did a good job of detailing, everything that had happened. But again, once this stuff came out, people started in with why didn't you go to the police? Why did you stay living in the home? Why didn't you run away? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And they were treated just like women have been treated as victims for years.
And at 6, and they did have family members testify. Family members that they had confided in testified and said, yeah, I went and told Kitty, and Kitty told me to mind my own business.
Yeah.
And, and they had several family members who testified and said, they told me this, and I went to the family, and the family did nothing. And I love all these people. So why didn't you just, at 13, you're supposed to just pick up stakes and be like, peace out, family.
Yeah,
I'm going to go support myself and do what? And you have to remember too, that they also testified to the fact that Kitty was, I'm sure Jose was too, that they were, verbally abusive as well. You're nothing. You're a piece of crap. You're this, you're that, And so here you are being, mistreated and being told you're garbage, you're nothing. So really you're going to have the wherewithal to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and figure things out. And, I watched this show on Investigation ID on the Discovery Network that I thought was really interesting because they interviewed a juror from Erik's jury talking about what it was like to be in the deliberation room. And one thing that she said was that when she looked over during that testimony of Lyle's, she looked over at one of the men on her jury, and he wrote down, Lyle alleges father abused him, then closed up his notebook, put it down, and then crossed his arms. And that was it. And she remembers thinking, oh, this is going to be a problem. Yeah. Because she said that she was working. She said, I, really wanted to. She said, Leslie's opening statement was very, very compelling. She was really good, but she was like, I really wanted to look at the evidence, look at the facts. I wanted to really be there and look at everything. And she said, but when I saw him write that, because I was listening to Lyle and I really believed him. She said,
this guy was unmoved.
Yeah, she said, unless this guy's the most brilliant actor in town, it felt very real and very believable. And what she said was what happened on that jury, and this is the jury that both these juries were hung juries. She said that it got very divided, that all the women really believed, both Erik and Lyle, that they were abused, that they felt like they were in danger, that they, manslaughter, that they were...
Yeah, they wanted voluntary manslaughter.
They wanted voluntary manslaughter. And all the men, they actually believed, they said they don't really have any proof, but they believed that the men were watching the news or that they had some sort of outside pressure being put on them to convict. That all the men wanted to convict because they didn't want to be seen as gullible in the eyes of the public.
Well, and this was a very male thing. There were so many triggering things. Like the prosecutor, who was a woman, she actually said this is a quote. She said in court that the brothers killed their parents because they knew they could never live up to their expectations. Lyle didn't have the intellect or motivation, and Erik was soft, a crybaby. So they're tapping into all these masculine, and I don't know if it was the first trial or the second trial, but there was a lot of homophobic things. People thought that Erik was gay. I mean, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but they somehow saw it differently. I mean, it was such a, God, what is the word? That was just the masculinity.
Was
a theme here. It was like anything that wasn't just totally masculine or whatever. It was like the men were just like, no, we don't want to have anything to do with thinking about that.
Yeah. Well, what this woman was saying was, she said, all the women were looking at the evidence and wanted to, manslaughter. And she said all the men were just justifying their opinions, which sounds like life. And she said that all of them, they just couldn't believe that a father could abuse their sons like this. They just couldn't believe that this could happen. And they wanted murder one and the women wanted manslaughter. And that's how they ended up with these hung juries, is they could not agree. They just could not agree on this. And that's how they ended up where they ended up. And I thought all of this was so interesting that they just could not see for 1 millisecond or believe for 1 millisecond that maybe it was like Jose being Cuban, like this maybe machismo man. Like, how could this guy who had all this money and all this stuff and this beautiful wife, like, how is it possible that
why would he do this?
Why would he do this? Why would he actually do this kind of thing with his sons? And the other thing was, neither of the sons were really doing that well. I think Lyle was at Princeton but failing out, or like he was failing, and then he
got kicked out for plagiarism. Yeah,
and my guess would be because he's probably a mess, and probably I think that Erik was a big tennis person and did well, but wasn't a superstar, and I think he did okay grades wise. But I think these two kids were. I think they were afraid. They were afraid all the time, and I think they were a bit of a mess.
Well, they were never good enough for their father. And it's kind of weird. It's like, what did these jurors, they don't think little boys get molested too?
No, they don't.
I mean, I would venture to say, I have nothing to back this up with, but I would venture to say that boys are sexually abused at the same or close rates as young girls. I mean, don't you think?
Yes, I just don't think it's not reported. This is the problem, right? Is we all know that.
Well, it's not reported by most people at all, but especially boys or men. Yeah.
Boys do not report it. I think that what we see in terms of, I think women are obviously in danger. I mean, most violent crimes are committed towards women more than men, because women are more vulnerable physically, for sure. But I think that men, yes, I think that when it comes to childhood sexual abuse, I think it runs the gamut.
Well, yeah, because
I just think that the problem is that it's underreported, and I think that it is, but it is extremely underreported for men across the board. No man wants to admit this because there's a different layer to it, because it's usually done by men. And there's the layer of homophobia and homosexuality. And I think that it makes it really complicated for men, because there is this piece of like, well, I'm not gay, so.
Well, and if you're talking about a child, I mean, my God, like, none of this is reported. What are children supposed to do? They don't even know, like, where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? You know, when it seems like when they do tell family members, nobody does anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that, I mean, there's a lot of mothers who, you know, and fathers who believe them and do something. Anyway, it's just, it was just really kind of sad to see this played out, and, you know, made me think about, you know, because, you know, we talk a lot about feminism, the Me Too movement, all this kind of stuff. But, you know, there's a whole, you know, men have, you know, similar issues. And I hadn't really thought about that, and hadn't thought about this case in a long time, and how it would be, hopefully would be at least a little bit different today. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, the jury was deadlocked, 2 mistrials. And they immediately said, well, we're gonna try it again.
Yep.
One thing, I don't know if did we talk, maybe it was before we started recording, about Leslie Abramson, about how apparently she was a victim of childhood sexual abuse. And she was a very zealous advocate for these brothers, and really impassioned, and really went out on a limb and was heavily criticized. Yeah. Heavily criticized. But she really, like, just gave it her all. And anyway, I just wanted to shout her out.
Yeah. Well, I wrote one of the things down that she said, because, you know, of course, she's doing this press conference after something. And when someone in the media says, well, is child abuse an excuse for murder? And she says, no. She says, I didn't argue that. She said, we argue that child abuse creates fear and trauma. And that fear in a certain set of circumstances will cause people to act like they have no choice. It's like, good for you.
Very well said. Yeah. I mean, it's just like it's like the battered woman's syndrome, you know, the burning bed.
All of those things.
Yeah.
I think what one thing that I do think is different is, and we talked about this in Killer Sally, right? Where she and in The Burning Bed, which is also another famous case, is both of those battered women, they do, you know, kill their partners and then get up and walk right to the police station and said, we did it.
Right.
I do wonder with Lyle and Erik, I mean, you know, they were trying to get away with it. Like, they were trying to, like, kill, you know, they did immediately try to get away with the murders. They did spend 6 to 7 months, you know, hiding, and not hiding. They
weren't hiding. They were out traveling.
They were out traveling. They were living it up, spending money. None of this really, again, I'm not an expert in these areas, so I don't know what the psyche is of a traumatized child. I mean, I think that I have heard them be interviewed and said that they weren't happy during this time. This wasn't like they were buying Porsches and, you know, living their best life.
I mean, they didn't know what else to do.
I think they were probably very, very lost. But I don't think it helped their case. I mean, it really never helped their case at all. So I do wonder what would have happened if they then turned around and said, we shot our parents and this is why, you know? I don't know. Maybe it would help, maybe not. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, the police kind of bungled it a little bit because they called 911.
Yes.
And said, you know, our parents are dead. They claimed that they went out to a movie or something and came home and found the parents dead. The police didn't even do a residue test.
GRS test.
To see if there was gun residue on their hands or body or whatever. They didn't treat them like suspects.
Yes.
Until later, I guess they might have had their suspicions, but until they really saw them like going all over the world. And honestly, if it weren't for the girlfriend exposing that tape,
they might have never
been arrested or charged because they didn't have enough evidence.
Yes.
So that was interesting.
So you want to talk
Okay.
about the second trial, because that was very different than the first trial.
So the second trial, the judge really, kind of took over this case and orchestrated a conviction by making several decisions that really, really limited the brothers' ability to do the same, to put forth the same defense. So the first thing he did was there was a case, an appellate court case that came out in between the first and the second trial that the judge said basically eliminated the option of imperfect self-defense. And I didn't read that case or the facts, but it's very boring and whatever. But suffice it to say that was no longer an option. So that took any type of manslaughter off the table.
Yeah.
So it was basically the first degree murder or second degree murder. And, death penalty or life in prison. Those were the only issues. There was no cameras. It was the same judge. One jury was going to try, decide for both of them. So by that time, they had run out of money. They didn't have any more money. Like the house was sold and was paid off to creditors and whoever. So Lyle was being represented by a public defender. And Erik somehow, he convinced Abramson to continue representing him for basically a reduced fee. I'm sure she never got paid.
Yeah.
So she was still involved in the case, but the judge limited testimony to only the events relevant to the brothers' state of mind 1 week before the killings. He did not allow all of those witnesses who came in, the family members and other witnesses who came in the first trial. Neither Erik nor Lyle testified. They didn't need to because he took self-defense off the table. So it was just kind of doomed for failure.
Yeah. Well, and also the prosecutors knew what was coming.
Right.
So
they were much better prepared.
Yeah.
Because they didn't treat the abuse seriously enough in the first one.
Yeah.
And this one, the evidence of abuse was so limited that, they just fought to keep everything out.
Well, and their attitude was, well, so what? You're abused. What difference does that make? You're still cold-blooded killers.
Right. So in this time, the jury only deliberated for 16 hours. In the first trial, they deliberated for weeks.
Yeah.
Erik's jury deliberated for 3 weeks. And then Lyle's was 5 weeks.
Yeah.
So this was 16 hours. And on March 20th, 1996, they were convicted of first-degree murder, but the jury did not recommend the death penalty because of the uncertainty over the abuse. And the judge went with that. The judge did not, he just imposed, they got 2 consecutive life sentences without parole.
Yeah.
And they now actually are at the same prison.
Yes. Well, yeah. And I was saying this to you before, where in this thing I watched, where they interviewed the jurors in the second trial, who also said, because they didn't hear anything about the abuse, that they said, well, if we had heard about the abuse, we might have a different outcome. They too thought that the abuse was important.
Yeah.
So, maybe they would have given them second degree. But second degree, I thought second degree didn't mean life without parole. I thought second degree meant it was 25 years or something.
It's probably 25 to life.
Yeah.
But these people, they're never going to get paroled. Even if you have the possibility of parole, people don't get paroled very often.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, what I think is so interesting, before we get to where they are, but they're both married. So,
one of them has been married 3 times.
Oh, I thought one was only twice. So Lyle, in 1996, Lyle married Anna Erickson. They got divorced in 2001 because Lyle was cheating on her with another woman. And so then in 2003, he married Rebecca Sneed. I don't know. Are they still married? Maybe he married someone else. And then in 1999, Erik married Tammy Ruth Sackelman. And I guess she has a daughter from a previous marriage, and they're still together. She wrote a book that I guess he edited and they put out. And I guess it's really, I mean, it's hard, but apparently she and her daughter drive up there every weekend to spend time with him. But yeah, all this time, they were sent to different prisons. And then finally in 2018, they were moved to the same unit and they got to hug for the first time, which I thought was so nice.
But I wonder if...
I always thought it was kind of shitty. It was just bad that they didn't get to be in the same prison. I just was like, come on, why can't they be together?
Well, yeah, I wonder if they really can be together, though. I mean, like, you would think that, I don't know, because of their notoriety, although they're not really that notorious anymore, if they have to be separated, even though they're in the same facility, the same prison. I mean, I don't know if they have got direct contact.
Well, I think they're in this housing unit now where, because I think they're both on, you know, I mean, listen, they're both in their 50s. They are
They're not dangerous.
Yeah, they're not dangerous. They probably are both in good behavior. And apparently they're in this unit where you get special things because you're in good behavior. And so I'm sure they both earned whatever they needed to earn to get here. And maybe they appealed to be able to get to where they are. I mean, personally, I mean, I know that it's probably very slim to none chance, but I would love to see, I don't know how it could be possible, but I would love to see, because I know all of their appeals ran out, but I would love to see, I just don't understand why at this point, it's been 30 years. Yes, I don't know what it's like to be them. I don't know what it's like, what was going on in their minds. Yes, I think that if this had happened today, if this were different circumstances, you know, all of those things, but it just feels like they did something before they were 25 when their prefrontal lobes were fully formed. They were traumatized children that were in a really, really bad state. And I can't remember if it was Erik or Lyle that said it. He talked about when they finally were arrested and he was at the LA County Jail. And he said it was loud and violent. He could hear people screaming and yelling. And he said, for the first time in my life, I felt at peace because he was finally not scared anymore. Like imagine being 18, 19 years old and LA County Jail is a peaceful place for you.
That's pretty bad.
Where you're hearing people scream and yell all over and you're up for murder. Of murdering your parents, and this is pleasant for you.
Yeah.
So I remember hearing that and thinking, this must be, you know, if you can believe it, I think that they are, even though they're in prison, I think they're happier there than they were in their home with their parents.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's not to say they wouldn't rather be free.
Yes.
But yeah, at home with their parents where they walked on eggshells and were being abused. And although, you know, they were at the time like 18 and 21. So I'm not sure why they didn't feel they could leave.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's about, because if it was really hellish there, you'd think that as soon as you turned 18, you'd just be like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's that whole thing that he said, if Lyle went to him and said, I'm going to expose you, and he says, well, I'm going to kill you if you expose me, then yeah, why doesn't Lyle say to Erik, you're 18, I'm 21. Let's pack up our stuff. We don't need this money. Let's just go. We're able-bodied people. We can put ourselves through college. We can figure this out. Let's go.
Well, unless they thought that their dad would find them, if he was really that maniacal, because if it did get out, it would have he ruined his life. He would have he wouldn't be able to work anymore. And, you know, he made a good amount of money. It's not like he was some big wig in the entertainment industry. He was kind of, you know,
but he had an estate of $14 million.
Yeah, he had money and whatever.
Which was a lot in 1989.
But he would have lost all of that.
I know,
if they would have come out and exposed him.
But so let's say they were just like, okay, we're not going to expose you.
But we're leaving.
But not even say we're leaving. We're not going to expose you. And then you just disappear.
Right.
Like,
I think they thought that.
But would he have come and then just went across country?
I think they thought that he
would have followed them.
He would have tracked them down because he did not want that the stress or the worry of that out there, not knowing at any time they could just, they could just come out. And maybe, because I remember Lyle saying that he basically said, not only am I going to kill you, but, if you try to leave or whatever, I'm going to track you down and kill you kind of thing.
Okay.
And they were traumatized. They were for years sexually, physically, emotionally, everything abused. They were so traumatized that they believed that.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I might think, fuck that.
Then you're right. They had no choice. Then they're absolutely right. So I come back to my original thing, which is they spent the first chunk of their lives traumatized and unsure. They spent the last 30 years paying the price for that, for killing their parents and surviving.
30 years is a long time.
Okay. So now they're in their 50s. Why can't they come out, and why can't they just spend the next, they're both married. Why can't they come out and maybe father a child or two and just spend the next 30 years of their lives living, having a home?
Because we have a draconian system of punishment for people who commit crimes in this country.
Yes, it's too much.
It's too much. We are warehousing old men who committed crimes 30, 40, 50 years ago and just letting them die in prison. People who, if you let them out, they would not harm anyone. And you know what? Just because you let someone out of prison after 30 years doesn't mean you're saying that they didn't still commit that crime, that they don't still, they still have to prove rehabilitation, all that. We don't focus on any kind of rehabilitation. So I'm not trying to discount the crime, but the point is that at what point has someone paid the price of being punished enough? At what point? I just don't believe in warehousing nonviolent people who have, acknowledged what they've done, have led a good life in prison, are not dangerous, whatever. I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
It's not going to bring these people back to life.
No. Well, and what's ridiculous is we've got these scumbags who are stealing money from people, ruining their lives, who are getting a couple years.
Oh, like Jen Shaw?
Yeah, that are ruining people's lives, that are getting 5 or 6 years here and there, and then out in a couple years after that. This is what drives me crazy. In Europe, they give people 25-year sentences because what they're saying is, listen, you're going to have to spend 25 years is a long time. That's a big chunk of time. That's a big price to pay. So this is what drives me crazy. I don't think that we should have life without parole. I think everyone deserves to have parole. I think that if someone does these heinous crimes.
Well, what about like the Night Stalker?
Okay. Listen, I think that there's these different levels. There are people
Ted Bundy.
Yes. The Night Stalker and the Ted Bundys and those, but that is a very small pop. We focus a lot on them in the news.
But it's not most of the
that is not most of the people
incarcerated.
Though that is a small slice. And there are people that are heinous, awful, awful people. I am not talking about those people. I am talking about the people that are 18, 19 years old that get into a gang and make a stupid mistake.
Or crimes of passion.
Crimes of passion. I'm talking about the kid who gets himself into trouble and is with his friend, and his friend shoots somebody and he's next to him and now he's in trouble. I'm talking about, and the ones, and they've worked incredibly hard to be
felony murder, which they've finally gotten rid of. Yeah,
and he's now earned a degree and done all these things in prison, and now he's 55 and he's now got another 10, 20 years. It's ridiculous. I'm talking about those people, and this. I don't believe, because you have to have hope. You cannot keep saying life without parole, life without parole. You have to give people parole. People deserve it. You have to give them hope. You have to give them hope. Everyone deserves parole. And I think that you can say, I think that you have to have 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Why can't you say to these Menendez brothers and say, like, if you do this, you get 10 years, 20, 30. And so why can't after 30 years, you say to these Menendez brothers, okay, it's parole time. Give us, do a presentation. Tell us why you deserve to come out. What are we going to do? And then put together a plan for them. They can be on probation, parole.
Right.
What's the plan? Where are you going to live? What you going to do?
And unfortunately, even people who are granted parole rarely get it. They rarely get it, especially for, if you kill someone.
What do you mean? If they're granted parole?
Like if you,
if
you're eligible for parole,
then they're not given it by
right. And it comes up that like if you're eligible for parole after 18 years, 18 years go by, you go before the parole board. You know, again, I don't know what the statistics are, but I don't think it's very good because, you know, even people who have gone through extensive rehabilitation, whatever, because you know what? This is the thing. No governor wants that on their watch where they parole someone and then they go out and kill someone.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that. And so for years and years and years, governors just didn't do it. And now hopefully, you know, some governors will start to be more progressive and look at it from the viewpoint that you're talking about.
Yes.
That we cannot just continue to warehouse nonviolent people who have paid their debt to society.
Yes.
Just because you're afraid that they're going to do something.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, Europe, they give you 25-year sentences. In countries that are much better than ours, in Norway, Sweden, you know what they do? They give people humane living conditions. Some countries give you humane living conditions in prison.
So you don't act out
so
and
that you
be violent.
Because I have here's a crazy idea. What if we, instead of making prisons so hellish, because people think like, well, let's make prisons so hellish so people won't want to go there and it's a deterrent. And I understand that. But the thing is that what if we made prison a place where people can actually go? And yeah, you don't want to make it Club Med, but you kind of want to make it a place where, yeah, you're still being removed from your family and friends, and it's a deterrent, but maybe not so hellish so that you can feel good about yourself.
Right.
Like,
you still don't have your freedom, but you can at least
empowered.
Be treated like a human being.
Yeah, you're being treated like a human being, that you're not fearing for your safety, because that's a big problem, that you're not being feared for your safety, that we are treating you kindly, that we're feeding you good food, that we're not, and that we are helping you better understand yourself and look inside yourself so that you can leave this place and be a better human being.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what other countries.
Very progressive.
I know. This hippie parents of ours. So, but the thing is that what a crazy idea. But the problem is, it always comes back to the reason why we're not feeding these prisoners better food is because these are for-profit prisons. And the people that, you know, the reality is that we could feed these people better food, but the people at the tippy top
won't make
want
as
all
much
the money.
Yeah.
So if the people at the tippy top didn't want to be millionaires and billionaires, we could do this.
Oh, I mean,
you know what we need? We need some kind of co-op hippie prison.
Well, prison reform and all this criminal, it's a big deal. But going back to this Menendez to Menudo, I mean, we'll see if they address this or anything in the documentary. I wonder if this could have any
I really
effect
hope it does. I really hope
their case. But it would, like a new trial, you'd have to, usually that's kind of what this is, where you have new evidence that's never come out before. Although I don't know if you could argue that, one person saying that Jose molested them is enough. I don't know. Well, that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, if it has any effect on them at all.
Is there anything else that could get them out of prison?
They could get a pardon
by
the governor,
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, any governor, you can apply for a pardon.
That's a little side project. Maybe we should be, writing to the governor.
Yeah, I haven't been following how many. We have a very progressive governor. I don't know how many pardons he's given. I don't even know if that's a thing. You always hear about the presidential pardons, but that has to be for a federal crime. But I don't know. I have to look at. I want to look into that. How many people has he pardoned, and for what? What kind of cases?
This is a good little project. Maybe here at the Psych Legal Pop podcast, we free the Menendez brothers.
That's our legacy.
Yes. Hey, this might put the podcast on the map.
Well, yeah, I'm sure we're pissing off a bunch of people right now by even saying this.
Who are we pissing off?
I don't know.
Are Jose and Kitty that popular with people?
No. But you know how people are. They
want these people to rot in prison for the rest of their lives.
We're just a couple of bleeding hearts. You know,
I know.
we are bleeding hearts, and I admit that. And you know,
I just feel like these they're for 50 years they've suffered enough. It's just enough. It's enough.
I feel like they've done enough time.
I feel like they've done enough time,
especially since I do believe it was a crime of passion.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that they were abused. I do believe that they were scared, even if it, you know,
and maybe, and listen, did Erik or Lyle or whomever needed to go and reload and shoot his mom in the face? Probably not. But do you think that he wanted to go and shoot that mom in the face? Yeah, probably. So again, he served 30 years for that choice that he made. It's enough. It's enough. There's a part of me that just kind of feels like it's enough. But our country, this world that we live in, it's just like, we just want to just
an eye for an eye.
Yeah. But hello, what did Malcolm X say? An eye for an eye leaves everyone blind.
Exactly.
That's why I don't believe in the death penalty.
I'm sure
someone's going to come after me about that. But an eye for an eye leaves us all blind. It doesn't work. The world isn't about like you. What does it mean when they go? You know, Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. Like, you can't spend your whole life avenging things, or, you know, they hurt me here, so I'm going to hurt you. You know, it's not about that. You have to learn how to forgive other people, not for them, but for yourself. And if we don't do that, then you're just going to spend your whole life miserable.
I agree.
Yes. All right, Brooke. You want to wrap it up?
Tess has finished her prison reform speech. And
I really do. If I didn't have to work and all this other stuff, this is what I think I would be doing. This prison reform.
Maybe someday, you'll get involved with it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you for joining us. If you made it this far, thank you for hanging in there. So next Thursday, we'll be talking about this Menendez to Menudo. So tune in. We are on social media, on Instagram and TikTok at Psych Legal Pop. If you like our podcast, if you could please subscribe and also leave us a 5-star rating and review. And any other things to announce?
I don't think so.
If you like Sister Wives,
yes,
please. We are doing Sister Wives. Tune in every Tuesday. We are now on. Went back and started from the beginning. We're now on season 3. We just finished season 3, episode 3. So come join us. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, it is.
All right.
We'll see you later.
See you later.
Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.